You can find me rolling like a stone, blowing in the wind down some highway, like smoke in the air on a Colorado breeze. Don't know how to come down, doing fine with my head in the clouds and these boots, landing on some higher ground.
Yeah, we still gonna grab a couple drinks?
Oh
after
yeah,
this?
yeah.
Sweet,
I'm yours
dude.
the rest of the
Hell
day
yeah,
and the
dude.
rest of the night.
So we can get some food then.
Yeah,
later
that
on.
sounds good too. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, I'm gonna be hungry when we're done with this. Yeah, I was feeling in that mood to, I don't go out at night a lot right now. Like I've been trying to cut back on all that shit,
Yeah.
and to replace it, because I'm just me. I don't have somebody. So I have my parents, and we try to do things, but I try to either, even if by myself, if not with friends, to do those day things. Like I want to. I've been there before, but tailgate over in Charlotte,
Right.
the one on Charlotte in Bellevue,
yeah.
they have like a great property,
Yeah.
which is like so much cooler than the other one. So I was like, a little keep it fresh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, I hope Scott wants to do.
I love
something. I was like,
tailgate. I never say
we
no
can,
to tailgate.
or
wherever.
hit
but
some,
right.
something that feels fresh.
Right.
Hit a cool neighborhood that I haven't been to in a minute. Okay. Well, I
Do you have a
think.
list of stuff you want to cover? Or you
Oh
just
yeah.
want to wing it?
Oh
Or-
yeah. I got a whole.
Yeah.
I got some rails. I got some bullet points to keep us on the
right.
rails.
Sounds
But
good.
but yeah, I'm excited for this episode. I definitely have thought about it, and I have some questions for you because this whole thing is very surprising. So anyway, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Higher Ground podcast. We have. I always say this, but we got a very special episode today. I want to introduce Scott Volkerding. Scott and myself met years ago. It's now been many years ago. We met in Chicago, Illinois at correct me if I'm wrong here, but we met at a Steve Seskin songwriting seminar. Is that right?
Wow, that's a better memory than I got.
Oh, yeah.
I could get as far back in Chicago, and then I can't pinpoint the event, but that sounds like a highly likely candidate.
I think it was in like Barrington or one of those towns. Like it was like a library or something.
Right, because all the stuff used to be in the burbs of Chicago. So that sounds right.
Yeah. So Scott is an amazing songwriter. We live in this town. Just very blessed. I think we both feel very blessed to be here. Just a lot of creative people from all places and all walks of life. We are two of them. We met in Chicago at a seminar for around the craft of songwriting, and then we both kind of had that same plan of moving here. And I think we met here probably within we were like a month apart. I think you beat me by like 3 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we had the same realtor. We have our buddy John Stanislawski, who I'd love to have on the show one of these days if John can give me a date. Then, but John used to live here. He lives in Madison, Wisconsin, the great Madison, Wisconsin now with his family. But he was mine and your realtor. But we both kind of came here for the same reason, I think. We both didn't have like these permanent ties in Chicago. And we wanted to pursue this songwriting thing and really take that craft to the next level. We've written a ton together over the years. And then, I think we have a little bit of parallel lines going on because we both have kind of gone down a very similar road, but then we've kind of branched off into some other areas, which I want to really dig into. But, Scott, like almost everybody on this show, or probably everybody on this show and myself, we probably consider ourselves Renaissance people in a way. and Scott is another one of those guys. So thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited. I thought, you were one of the first people that I reached out to once I started doing this and decided it'd probably be more than an episode or two, because I thought you would dig it. So, yeah,
I love it. You're always got a good next idea, and in some
thanks,
ways,
man.
I mean this in the best ways, but it's always, you're a trailblazer. So I feel like you kind of set the trail, and for people like me, it's always great to kind of follow in those footsteps. I actually think you moved here. You might have moved here before I did, just a little bit.
Okay.
And then just the trajectory of all of it. There's so many things to get involved in, and whether it's a seminar or some new motivational self-discipline type thing, whether it's a Tony Robbins idea or it's a songwriting thing, it's always there's plenty that we have in common, but it's you're a mentor in many ways, because it's from your trailblazing and all those things. So no, it's been great. It's been a great journey, and I think about the Chicago days a lot, and just the whole journey. It's in some sense hard to believe. It'll be 7 years for me in August since moving to Chicago, which is probably about similar for you. So it's just crazy to think about all the whole path.
It is, man. I remember, me and Scott have, you and I have a relation. I'm going to stop talking to the camera. You and I have this, one of those relationships where we might not see each other for like 6 months or something, and then we get back and we like kind of do that big catch up thing. So I always enjoy that. And I think that's always the time when you realize how much really has changed. Like when you live the day to day, especially in a town like this, and when you're kind of a weirdo, crazy person like you and I are, creative people, can be that way. You don't stop and smell the roses all the time. You don't notice the roses going by and all these things until like you sit down and have a conversation when you haven't seen somebody like a buddy
We
in
hit
6
it all.
months.
Yeah, it's almost like a benchmark.
Yeah,
of sorts,
I think
where-
we're both we both like have, I appreciate the kind words, but I think we're the feeling's mutual. It's like we always have that thing of like, wait, you're doing what now? Which is
That's
like
right.
really cool, to have supportive buddies like that, because sometimes like I had a conversation. I called my buddy Danny today. I won't get into details, but I have another one of my little projects that I'm gonna go head first in and see what happens. And I talked to my buddy Danny about it I like pitched it to him for like 45 minutes, kind of like I would with you if we were at Broadway Brewhouse or something. And I was like, I get through my spiel. I'm like, I'm not crazy, right? Is it cool? Does it sound cool? I don't know. But yeah, man. Yeah,
I didn't see the creative act on this bookshelf, but I think we've talked about it.
yeah.
It kind of
I don't have a
reminds me
physical
of just
copy.
like
Yes.
like those conversations. It's like one of the concepts in there is a follow the breadcrumb type of idea.
Yes.
And sometimes you get on these side projects that sometimes they turn into something, sometimes they don't, but it's all okay. It's all making that creative hamster wheel go, and it's all feeding the same process to get to where we want to be. So whether it's everything, can't remember if we talked about this. I started writing. I mean, country music is my passion.
Yes.
But it's like I've got this side project now where I started writing a musical, and it's
Oh,
like
God.
you
I
kind
wanna
of
get
go
into all of
into
this. Yes.
But similar to what you're getting at, we come up with these side projects, and 6 months will go by, and we get together and start talking about these latest. In some cases, are in tangents. In some cases, it is the path for the next foreseeable future. But it's all part of the beauty of this whole creative life that we're living. So
yeah. Tell me about that really quick. Like, I want to get into more later too. Again, if I don't see you for like maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 months, like I remember, there was like kind of 2 iterations of that, and it was like I saw you maybe like a year ago, and you were like, I'm writing a book, and there's a lot of complexity that goes into that, and then like the next time I saw you like 3 or 4 or 5 months, then that kind of led into again this breadcrumb thing, this kind of like following this this pull of inspiration. You know, you were inspired, you know, so you're pulling this in this new direction, and then a few months later it's like, oh, but there's this other thing too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Adjacent to it, like nearby. So totally relate to all of that. So give us a little like background on the book that you have going on, and then the musical as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's again, we moved here to be songwriters, but sometimes these ideas come up that turn into something else. And I traveled a bit for a day job, and there would always be an empty chair. I did a lot of solo traveling, and there's a lot of people that are traveling, solo for a lot of different reasons. But I would go, whether it's a meal, you're going up to a bar, there'd always be an empty seat someplace, a bar stool. You go and get a table for one. It might be a booth, a bar, whatever. And every time I'd be sitting there, kind of get lost in thought about if I could have anybody sit in this seat right now and have this meal or this beer, who would it be? And most of the time it was somebody from, childhood best friend or somebody you've lost touch with in high school or college or that type of thing. And, we have that thought sometimes what it would be like if I called that person. So I just started doing it and documenting that experience, and it's been really rewarding. And then those type of experiences end up feeding song ideas and things like that. And similarly for a the musical idea, same type of thing. It's like you might have an idea that and I think the Rubin book gets into this too. You might have an idea that it's meant to be something other than a country song.
Yes.
And those are just two brief examples. This book, some of the ideas end up would be better served for a book. Because I actually tried the perfect example. I actually tried to write a song called Empty Seat. I was really struggling with it. Yeah. And it's in the process of that struggle, I thought, well, maybe this is just a book, where you reach out to people and you document that conversation and leave the song behind. So that's kind of how that idea was born. And then similarly with the musical, it's this has never happened to me except for this one time, where people talk about how a moment of inspiration where like a lot of information is coming at once. And I was sitting in my room at my old place, and I had this, I saw everything in this musical, the characters, the sets, the songs, titles, and I just got a bunch of paper and I started documenting them all down, the names of all the characters, who they are, who they represent. I've got a song list, the whole thing. And I had always heard about that, but I had never experienced a thing where you just get this, we don't know where it comes from, but it's like, I just went crazy and,
cause that's so much
wrote
bigger
it all
than
down.
than scribbling out a song real quick. This
Right,
is like,
yeah, that's
there's
right.
all these, this is multi-layered when you're talking about a musical, like you said, characters
right,
and plot
yeah.
development and music and all these.
Right.
Yeah.
And the framework was there, and now I'm slowly working on that. The song title list and how does this really all go together? And I've reached out to a buddy I went to high school with who's already written and produced his own musical. So I'm hoping we can, maybe collaborate on this. But those are just two quick examples of this whole kind of creative life that we're living, that it's and even during that musical I would pull back sometimes thinking, I moved here to write country songs, what am I doing, this is a distraction. So I actually tried to not do it for a while, and
Sure.
I can't remember where I was, but I just started singing. How musicals have like that main theme that like keeps coming up, and it's the same kind of similar melody, but then it's different ideas.
Yeah.
I can't remember where I was, but I could not get this main song out of my head and how it all tied together. And it's like, all right, I guess this means I need to keep working on this. So, like you were saying with these parallel things, they're all kind of going at once. I'm still writing country songs. I'm working on this musical. I'm working on this book. And it just following, trying to figure out where the good energy is that day or that week, and working on that project. And who knows, as Rick Rubin would say, maybe some of these things actually come to life at the end. Maybe those things are a way to get you to someplace else, but it all feels good. So that's
And that's the important thing, man. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like sometimes, maybe you feel like, focusing on too many things, but I think it's nice to have a few big important things in the hopper at all time, like kind of the gears turn on each of those. I think, man, I don't know about you, man. That stuff keeps me out of trouble. You know what I mean? And I don't just mean like, superficially, but like keeps my head thinking of probably thinking more positively, like keeps me out of the gutter.
Yeah, and fresh, because it's a fresh idea can get you out of that place that you're stuck.
Like
So
that's the beauty of this creative life is, it keeps you out of. It keeps me, everybody struggles with different things and stuff, but like me, as far as like things like depression and stuff like that goes, and anxiety, it keeps me out of that. Life will put me back in it, sure, but if I have something to go to, that's like sizable, that's what I mean. It'll keep me out of trouble. It'll keep me out of that darkness. Right. You know what I mean?
And the energy that comes with it. I've been getting more into energy stuff,
absolutely.
And just kind of following what that good energy is. It feels good. At least it's worth an exploration, whether it's
I'm so glad you found that stuff. Like, I know you've been becoming, the last 2 years, I noticed like you became, wherever you were before, or maybe it's just getting to know you, but I think you did have, I think I can confidently say that you went through a transition spiritually where you were tapping into things that you've articulated, like you hadn't tapped into quite as much previously, and it's been a big positive change for you.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I've noticed the same thing with you in the sense that I think it's, in some sense, it's part of it's pretty common in this kind of creative journey where like we moved to town, and again, we've done a lot of the seminars and all the people that are telling you what you're supposed to be doing, and then you reach a point where it's like you get the nuts and bolts down, and then you start to give yourself the freedom to be able to explore some of these other things, and you have to kind of work past the what people think you should be doing next, with regard, whether it's a song, a project, breaking a songwriting rule, starting a new project that, like I said, I tried to tuck myself in and be a distraction, but it's not a distraction. It's part of being that maturation process of a creative. And it's been awesome to go through that with people like you who you've known, because as you were saying earlier, you don't realize some of this stuff until you look backwards.
Yeah.
And when you start to look back, like at our Chicago days, for example, and the journeys that we've taken through that, it's always great to have people that you're walking that walk with. And even like you were saying, when you get on your different, sometimes we go a little different ways in terms of following, the breadcrumbs on our projects, but it's, we're together on the creative journey, and that maturation process that happens from the time when, imagine going back to your first seminar, that Steve Seskin thing probably was one of the first songwriting things that you mentioned earlier. Yeah. Probably one of the first songwriting things that I ever went to. And back in those days, it's like we didn't know how to write a song at that point.
Man.
Like we knew what we liked.
I maybe had three. I think I had two country songs.
That's
like
right.
When I went to that seminar.
That's right.
I wrote one with Karen Kiley. You know Karen?
Yeah.
We had written like a couple songs, and she had been in that country world for a minute. I had like Carrie, first co-writer ever, buddy Carrie Meacham. You know Carrie too, I think.
Yeah.
He said, you should write with Karen. And then, so me and her got connected. We probably wrote maybe 2 songs. So I'd written some songs with Carrie, but Carrie was like literally writing 100% lyric, and I was writing 100% music. That was our relationship. With Karen, that was the first, like, where you're really collaborating on both. So I probably had like 2 songs, man.
Yeah. and there was so much to learn. So much to learn. And it's just a different, we're all learning all the time, but it's just a different part of the journey.
Yeah.
It's like you realize now looking back, and you don't realize at the time we thought we really knew what was going on. But when you get further along and you kind of look back at things, it's like, wow, those songs that I was writing back then weren't very good.
Right. Right.
So that's probably a good lead into this whole this Love Was song. I don't know when you want to get into that, but part of what I really love about that song is that it's kind of that whole thing. You don't, in some sense, life is learning how to love, and you don't really know what love was until you get beyond it and look back, and as you keep going through this thing, it's like you don't really know we're all learning how to love all the time, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't, each relationship and each thing, you can't really fully squeeze all the juice out of it until you look back
Dude,
at that.
dude,
and
I have
that's
some-
what spoke to me in that song.
Dude, no. Well, I want to get into that because yeah, you really surprised me with this one. Okay, so as Scott mentioned, the song we're going to tackle today, this show, as everybody kind of who's familiar with the show knows, this show's all about taking a song from the catalog and kind of ripping it open and diving in and see if maybe there's a lesson there. Just because you write a song, again, kind of talked about songwriting as a spiritual process. I don't think we're always conscious of everything, of all the lessons that might be found in a song. I think they come from a bigger place, and we're the vehicles that capture that stuff. With that being said, sometimes there's these lessons in there. Sometimes there's a deeper universal kind of theme that's worth discussing with your buddies. So, with that being said, when I always ask all the guests if they can to pick a song that they want to discuss, one that they connect with, because it's all about we're not here to talk about the song or myself as much as we're here to see how Scott relates to this thing. So with that said, I only want to say one thing here, or just a couple things here. Okay, I want to plug some friends real quick. Wrote this song forever ago with I don't know if you know this, but I think you know the band that I wrote this with. So myself, Joey Ebach, wrote this song with Apollo's Crown. Do you know who that is?
I've heard you talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, that's Brian Mello from Canada, Victoria Boland, and Andrew Rudd. They were a three-piece Canadian band, but I think two of those folks actually have Australian, the dual citizenship. Anyway, of all places, we met here in Nashville through Clay Myers. He hooked us up to write with those folks, and we wrote a bunch of songs together when they were a band. They're no longer a band anymore. But what I do remember is that I would have to say that everybody in that room was in love deeply at the time. But probably for me, I'm not going to speak for those folks, but for me, I talked about this on a previous episode that sometimes these songs, their trueness and their heart, here in Nashville, we try to not write BS. We try to, mean it, what we're saying. We're not faking it, but sometimes things aren't so true, right? It's not like autobiographical, right? But I think for me, this was kind of a wish, a hope, a prayer from my perspective. So knowing those folks, I was just very surprised when I said, what song you want to do, and you were like, this one, and you were even saying like, I've had it on repeat, I've been listening to it like crazy, I love it, great job on the song. The reason why I was surprised was, we've had a lot of conversations. You usually don't strike me as like the romance, like the sucker for romance. You know what I mean? I'm like a chick flick guy, and like The Notebook is like one of my favorite movies, right? I feel like it's probably not one of your favorite movies.
No, it's not. But I'll tell you,
that's why the song, it blows me away that you picked this one. So, man, yes, tell me about what drew you to this.
there's so much to a song, of course, but I'm a melody guy, so
Okay.
I know, and this goes back even when I was a kid. Like I get into a song either very quickly or not, and when those first couple bars come on, it's like the thing that I turn up and be like, well, what is this? I ironically, my parents have a timeshare in Florida, and this was a big deal every year for music because back in the day, with CDs and stuff like that and a Walkman, so you had to whittle down all the music that you loved to 12 CDs or so that made the cut, for these Florida trips. And I would spend hours on the beach, usually at night, after a day of being in the ocean and the pool and whatnot. And that's what I would do at night. I'd go find a lounge chair out on a beach and listen to these songs. So I happened to be at that same beach when this song comes on, and it just, the whole package, like I said, the original, the way it starts as a melody guy, I'm instantly drawn in. I'm on that same beach, that I was as a grade school and high school kid, with my CDs, and it had me from the very beginning. And then you start to get into the messaging of the song, and like I was saying earlier, I think what I really love about it is it is about love, but it's also about life in the sense that this whole, what love was. It's like we're here to learn, and we learn some of our hardest lessons in love and relationships, and that song beautifully captures all that. And I think my favorite line in the song, just kind of thinking through it, really quickly, is let a couple more stars align, because we've always, we always think about, that's become such a the stars align for me and I got this.
Yeah.
And just, it's sometimes that's the challenge of a songwriter, is taking a universal idea that everybody knows, but saying it in a little bit different way. And I loved it. The whole, and it's important, I guess, of what I'm trying to say is it's the whole thing, the melody, the whole prosody of the melody with the message of the song really all comes together in a really, really beautiful way. And
appreciate that.
Hence the playing it on repeat, because you got to play it a couple times just to get it. I used to listen to songs years ago, just being so into melody that I could just get into that. So and then keep listening a couple times and that's what I love about country is the lyric, but it's I'm wrapped up in all of it. So it ends up being on repeat because you
keep finding little
you get
more
into
nuggets.
the melody, now you're paying attention to the lyric, and now you come away with something just a little bit different every time, even though the such a strong, powerful message there that you can tie into, and the images that come flooding back. When you listen to a song like that, it reminds you of any listener that's listening to that back at their former relationships in their life, and just the way it's done, it takes you on that journey in 3-4 minutes. So loved it. It was easy for me because I got into it right away.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, no, you brought up a really great point, and that makes sense to me of what did draw you to it, because you're like, well, yeah, maybe the obvious romance of it, maybe that wasn't as big as like the whole like how life changes thing. We're talking about that kind of thing all the time. So that makes a lot of sense. Question for you: So, and I'm glad that you understood the song, because sometimes I think, to me, it's like pretty fluid and easy to understand logically, but you have this character kind of like growing from, kind of reflecting back all the way to high school years, on their partner, and then just talking about how it's always a mystery. You're always learning, and in that life, to your point. With that said, I don't know how I guess I do know how I feel about it, but I want to know, before I kind of say anything, I want to see if you imagined yourself finding your person early on in life, if you go all the way back, and even to childhood. We all daydream about that stuff, probably. I don't think anybody, like, when they're a child or growing up, coming of age, that anybody's like, you know what, I'm going to die alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I think that's part of the beauty of the song. When
Yeah.
when you go back to, let's say, grade school crush days,
Right.
You know, like, I thought I knew what love was, and it's one of the big hook of the song. And it's like, when you're in eighth grade romance, or you're at I can't remember what your skating parties were at, you know, grade school and high school, at like the roller rink.
Yeah. We had one.
You know, you of course you think you know what love was, like that playground love, you know, that you experience in grade school or high school. Of course you think it's real, and it's
Right.
real in its own way, but you don't. That's what you think love was on the playground as you know, a 6th or 7th grader, or, you know, as a junior in high school. You really think you're in it, and then when you get a little further down the road and you kind of look back at that, it's a little different. But the whole time that you're experiencing it all, you think you know what it is, and it was real. That's not to take away from how real it felt at the time, but
Right.
that is the beauty of the song, is that you get beyond, and you're growing this whole time. And for me, even the biggest message is that's what we're doing here in life, is learning how to love. And I think it doesn't always happen in a linear, straight line fashion, but
Right.
it's like every relationship, and it doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship, every meaningful relationship in your life, that, you know, the people that come and go, it's you know, you learn something from that, and we tend to get bigger and stronger, and most importantly, learn how to love. Like, learning how to
Right.
love is we spend a lifetime doing that.
Yeah.
You know,
unfortunately,
and
there's probably some casualties along the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So the song speaks to that learning,
Yeah.
and kind of the progression of getting from what you thought love was to, until you get to the next place. And it's just, it keeps happening, right? Because it's with each relationship, and as we grow and mature, you think you know what love was, and then you realize later that maybe you didn't, or in some cases maybe you did, and it's part of
Right.
still part of the journey of learning how to love, which in and of itself is
Complicated.
that's right.
I mean, with that younger mind, that maybe more naive mindset, can you remember? So I'll tell you how I felt like when I was young, like maybe kindergarten, maybe even a little bit before. Like, I would daydream and think about myself as like married with kids and stuff like that. You know, because like that's what I had around me. I'm only speculating. That's why I maybe felt that way. And I'm maybe like, you know, some people would say like I'm a romantic to some degree. Maybe not as much anymore, but that's definitely how I felt growing up. And as I would grow older, that didn't really change until maybe more recently. Like through my teens, early teens to late teens, really coming of age into adulthood, 20s, 30s. You know, even when I was like kind of in my wilder days, I was still, while I was doing those things, while I was being a little more wild in my ways, you know, things that the right person for you that would, you know, want to settle down with you wouldn't tolerate, you know what I mean? While I was doing those things, I was still daydreaming about finding that person. And I probably was just up until recently. Now I'm kind of enjoying just my my singleness. But did you have a similar experience?
It's a little more complicated because I you know, as a gay man, I really struggled. Like my youth is a little more complicated because I
Yes.
didn't actually even start to get comfortable with where I am at today until late into college. And even then it's been a journey, and it's I'm in as good a place as I've ever been. I'm happy. I'm in a happy relationship now. That,
Right.
but when we start talking about like a grade school playground, or even like which ironically, when you go back that far, you know, in grade school, I think I was trying to convince myself that I did want to grow up and get married to a woman and have kids, and it's a very confusing time that probably it's a whole separate podcast on that. But so it was a little bit different. Like I maybe in grade school it was kind of the straight normal life, for lack of a better phrase, is what I thought I was going to do. And then it started to get complicated in high school.
Sure.
And then, even into college. And it wasn't until the second part of college that I really started to get comfortable with myself.
Yeah.
So which is also why these songs, there's that layer too. There's so much in these songs that are, it's so simple. The language is so simple, but the places it takes you. It's what I thought love was is very complicated and also very different.
That's why this is such a great perspective. Rethinking what you thought love was in a whole other kind of way, and with all kinds of complexity around that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally different. Now I'm 45. You compare what I think love is now versus what I thought it was when I was 14, or totally different.
That's wild.
That's again the beauty of music and the beauty of the song.
Yeah, what a great point. Yeah, I mean, now it's starting. See, this is why I asked the question. Now it's starting to make sense. I'm like, that kind of hit me as soon as I was like, what's the hook of that song? It's, you got me rethinking what I thought love was.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, as you're coming of age, just rethinking that, and in a whole other way than somebody like myself, just different way entirely.
But even if you're with your high school sweetheart, let's say, for life,
completely.
and my parents are, there's, I can think of several other examples. My parents were high school sweethearts. But if I imagine that, even though that's not my story, that what I would imagine that what you thought love was when you're 16 is very different than when you're having a 50th wedding anniversary. I mean, love changes.
Right. And that's kind of what we talk about in the song, right? It's like, even in the bridge, it's like, when we're porch swinging. 80 years young.
That's right. Yeah.
It's
totally different. What you thought love was on your porch then is going to be way different than you thought it was.
Because there's grandkids involved, and there's, again, levels of complexity, and again, hopefully we can, for those of us that do have a partner, we can look to them, and there is mystery there. There is that relationship is still alive enough where you're still kind of peeling back that onion. Very interesting. Okay, well, that makes a lot more sense to me now.
Well, in some cases, I'm glad love wasn't what I thought it was, or I wouldn't be with my current partner, So 100%. It's that whole unanswered prayers, thing from that was one of my favorite songs growing up in the Garth days, that concept. But that also is another layer of this song. It's like you, not only did you think that's what love was, you're damn glad that it wasn't how you thought it was, because
seriously,
that's not where you were supposed to be, and that's not who you were supposed to be with. So that I think all these things are in that song, which is partly what I love about it. It doesn't matter if you're high school sweethearts, if you've had a much more irregular path to being with the person that you're with. It's all in the song.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, if you notice, he doesn't, he's coming from a very he's coming from a place of the singer, the voice in the song, the narrator, I guess. He's clearly coming from a place of gratitude and love, right? So it didn't get worse as the years went on.
Right.
So, yeah,
that's right.
To your point, it's like, regardless of what your situation is, hopefully none of us are are learning less along the way.
No,
You know what I
I
mean?
think most, but there's exceptions to
Yeah.
everything. But I think people,
Yeah.
it's generally
It's a
an
little more
upward trajectory.
Upward.
Even if you're in a situation now where you think it's not,
Yeah.
look back in 5 or 10
Yeah.
years, get to where you
Yeah.
will be in another 5 or 10 years. And I'll bet if you look
Yeah.
back on these days, be like, oh, no, that makes sense.
It's like the stock market. We were talking about the stock market before the thing started. You know, when people like lose their damn mind, you know, with the stock market, when you know you have a bad day, right? It's the cliche is, you know, zoom out, right?
Right.
So if you're going
Yeah.
through the trials and tribulations, you know, just zoom out, and you'll see. To your point, you will look back. Look at the 5-year view. It's going to look a lot better than the 6-month view, right?
That's right.
Or whatever.
I mean, you can do that within the context of a relationship. You know,
100%.
you find yourself getting sideways on some of the details, you know, back up to, you know, however far you need to go. Sometimes it's just to rewind. If you're having a bad week, just wind up to next week. If you're having
Yeah.
a bad year, keep, you know, bringing the camera lens out to,
Right.
to
Till it looks better.
you know, it's and that's hard to do. I
Yeah,
think
it is.
discipline. Sometimes we're all human. We all get emotional about certain things, or certain things that there are different things that are important to us, and sometimes we end up not doing that. It's a good reminder just to zoom out, and regardless of however long the relationship is, there's a lot to be learned about just kind of pulling back from the day to day and
Yeah.
looking at things. And then when you start going backwards, relationship to relationship in life, there's even more there, you know, to learn. But I think, in all that to say, I think it's as we get, you know, older and start to figure out how to love, I think that's generally an upward trajectory that happens with age and experience, even during the times where it feels like it's not. I think.
Oh yeah.
I really, from a spiritual perspective, I think that's what we're doing here. I think we're life's purpose is to learn how to love,
I agree with you.
and it happens at a different rate.
You notice how,
different-
like, no matter how much success you have, I think there's this thing. There's obviously some level of, you know, we want to see growth in our lives and we want to have our needs met. Once those needs are met, like once you hit a certain threshold, I know that you know this, I know that I know it, and I feel like all of us know this. Once our needs are met, or we believe that our needs are met, happiness really doesn't come from things like money anymore and material possessions. It starts to be based around, you know, am I finding love? You know, is this need around love, is that being met? You know, we want to grow, we want to do all these things. That's great. But you can keep climbing the ladders of success, but yeah, to your point, there's nothing really quite like love. You can't, you know, if you have a love-shaped hole in you can't fill that with money. You know what I mean?
That's right. I mean, you're bringing up a whole nother layer on love of self. And
Yes.
even within this creative journey, look at your trajectory, where you've come, and your mind frame of when we first got to town and kind of trying to write hits for the row. And now you've got your whole artist trajectory, that part of this journey is finding out how to love yourself and what's important. And I know, you know, the word authentic is a cliche in terms of, you know, saying people be authentic, but I think it's taken for granted in the sense that, you know, it's at times we want to look in a how-to book to get to wherever we think we want to go. But I think part of where the magic really starts to happen is when you start to figure out who you are, whether as a writer, as an artist, as a creative person, and really dialing into that. And that's a big challenge, but that's also love, honoring yourself and what do you want to do, and not be so tuned into what other people are telling you should do, or other people are telling you that you need to do to get to this place you think you want to go. It's the self-discovery part of this is a whole nother layer to what I thought that love was,
right,
as ourselves, when we just kind
Absolutely.
of look back at our own life. So another reason to, to really love the messaging of, and I love how songs do that.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can kind of get lost in a good way on all these things because of where that combination of words and melody takes each person in their life, the nostalgia of it all, the individuality, the romantic love, there's so many layers there, and that the song then becomes a conduit to take people on that ride. And I think it's tapping into that. And for me, like I said, as soon as that start rolling, I was on the ride. The roller coaster was out of the station, and I was ready for the ride. And
That's so cool, man.
It's
yeah. Music's an incredible. That's where it sounds so cliche, but there's nothing quite like it, because to what you just said, there's when music becomes a soundtrack to your life, or you connect with music in some way, you attach a song to an event or a time period or a person, what have you. That there's this kind of it kind of gets etched in that way, but it can be it can transcend space and time. Like there's that's why when I always kind of think about this when I'm looking at my kind of doing some admin work, looking at my analytics, like looking at my catalog, and are we growing in listenership? Is the audience growing? Are they enjoying what what I'm handing them? And it is not lost on me, this transcending of space and time, like different, like when I'm gone from this world, that'll still be here floating around somehow, because due to an algorithm or whatever exists at that point in time, how people bump into songs right nowadays. It's probably due to kind of algorithms and software, but either way, wild.
It's all energy. We're back to energy again, because it's like the energy that a song causes by coming on. I forget where this came from. This is but the song that comes on is the song that needed to come on at that time,
Yes.
And it's I think we've all experienced that too, where you might be in the middle of an airport or anywhere, and just kind of that song that just
like
seems so timely, it totally changes the energy. It changes the mood, changes the energy,
your whole nervous system
almost immediately.
Yeah.
And but it's all energy, and I think that's kind of the beauty of this too. And then
that's a great point.
Nobody knows how to manufacture it other than to show up and be as real as you can for that day,
and tap in and be able. Like we always talk about it. I'm always whenever I make this point, I always got like my eyes in here, because it's like, to me, it's like this. It's you and I, and there's this space here. I'm trying to stay open and hoping for something bigger than me, for that, God, whatever you want to refer to it as, like to whisper in your ear, yeah. You're right.
That part of it's been great too. We were talking about this Julie Cameron book when we came in, and I mentioned the Rick Rubin book. Those ideas, all those things that you just hit, weren't even on my mind when we first started learning how to write songs. And that's what's been cool about this journey in the last couple years. And those books get into all those things. And it's a common thread.
Yeah.
I just finished Mary Guthier's book as well. Those same concepts are in there.
Yeah.
And it's an exciting part of the journey, because it's a whole nother, it's different, than it was even a couple years ago.
I agree. It's kind of like your PhD, it's like you got to get, and that's why it's so important, I think, to keep going as a creator, or just a goal-oriented person, which so many of us are, right? And I always hope that when folks find a goal that they want to achieve, that even if it's a little far out, that they can keep rolling. Because I was thinking about it today. It's like, well, this is what I want over here. There is no like shortcut. There is no elevator to skip all these other floors, right? The sooner I start, I'm like boom, boom, and then I'm still going to have to go through the steps. My point is, when you, hindsight's 2020, but because there is no shortcut, we needed those fundamentals. We needed to go to the Seskin seminar. We needed to put the reps in, write the silly songs, and get to the, the great ones, even when they were spotty. They wouldn't happen all the time. And they started getting real good. And then when you can start to turn on those antenna, then really that's when, that's like that PhD level.
Right, that's right.
As a creator, you can really do anything.
And having the courage to follow those,
Yeah.
especially when they start to change what you thought you wanted. It's like being open to where that takes you. That's just a whole nother.
Oh, it's a whole.
And you got to learn how to do that too. We're talking about learning how to love and what you thought love was.
Yeah.
Like what I thought writing a song was. The last couple years is totally different.
Right.
We're still writing songs, but the experience of it is totally different. What I thought being a songwriter was.
Yeah, we could write a parody of Love was about being a
is
song.
very different than it is now. So, and we're talking about keeping things fresh and stuff earlier. This is all. It all keeps it fresh and the energy and keeps you going and finding that thing that keeps you going. Most of the time it's easy, but we all have hard days where we start to question. What am I doing? Whether it's a project or an idea or chasing something down, and just finding that good energy and trusting that it'll lead you to where you need to be.
Right. Great point. Question for you: going back to love in a sense with a partner, what do you think is the best thing about growing with a partner where you're turning kind of months and years into a lifetime?
Being open to that journey too. It's a journey. There's so much to learn about ourselves, and now you're in a relationship with somebody else that you got two things happening. That person's still trying to grow into themselves, and you're also in the concepts of a relationship. So it's because those things don't stop, right? So it's not like as soon as you get into a relationship, you stop self-discovery. You now have two people in a relationship that are trying to grow themselves as humans and also grow together in a relationship. And that takes a lot of, there's a lot to be learned there. And I think that kind of goes back to my overarching point. I think life in the grandest sense is learning how to love and all the different things that come up with love. I mean, I remember I wrote a song or two about this, but a friend of mine was talking to her grandma who they were married for many years, and she asked her grandma, what's the secret to love? And she said, well, that the secret, to lasting all these years is to making sure that you don't fall out of love at the same time. And you think about that.
Can you explain that? As to why? I think I know why, but
I mean, that's all she said, and that the way I've kind of interpreted that is things get hard. In a relationship, relationships are hard. They're incredibly rewarding and they're hard. Anybody who's in a relationship is going to tell you that. There's nobody that has the storybook relationship.
Right.
It just doesn't exist. And I think that quote from my friend's grandma says, there are times when it gets so hard that you have this internal dialogue with yourself that's like, is this something that I want to continue doing? And
you need
trying
that other person. That's
right. You need the other person to really kind of pull you through. And it goes back to that whole self-discovery thing. We're even though we're in a relationship where we spend a lifetime learning about ourselves and discovering, ourselves. And that's all happening while you're in a relationship. So in those periods where you're really struggling with yourself, your partner can be there to kind of bring you through that period. Because, I mean, that's an old cliche too. You can't love somebody else until you love yourself.
Right.
And that's not linear either. And that's not something that you learn and then you don't. It's never a problem anymore. That's also things that in lifetime kind of ebb and flow. And in the context of a partnership, back to the grandma quote, it's like that's the trick, is to you pull each other through the hard stuff, and you don't give up. And that's what that said to me. And it takes work. You got to work at it, but every relationship has its good and bad times, and really fighting through the bad times, particularly when your partner's struggling, is to be the lightning rod to help bring them through.
Right. And so that's a great point, because we started with the idea that, what's the best thing about that partnership that grows into a lifetime. And it's like, I think you nailed it. It's like, by discussing, because that was another one of my questions, was what are the challenges? But you kind of framed it in a great way, where it feels to me like the challenge, that going through those challenges give you this level of growth that you can never get by yourself, when you're just only responsible for yourself. Going through those challenges kind of lift you up, to a level of intelligence, again, that you can't replicate elsewhere. And that's probably the best thing ever, because now you are probably set up for a level of reward in this life this short life that we live, that is kind of just reserved for the people that are able to put in that kind of work. That's very cool.
You know what else I think is hard, that I think about sometimes, that I think that I imagine this is pretty common for people that move to Nashville. It's such a big thing, like to be part of the industry, to need to move here. In the context of a relationship, it's a huge sacrifice for that other person. So it's,
yes,
we talk about, we're talking about how easy, as individuals, even though you're in a relationship, people are still, everybody's got hopes and goals and dreams that they want to do. But the part of the craziness of this Nashville life is, you're in a relationship and you move to Nashville, the sacrifice that those people that are with us crazy people,
right,
who I knew I had to come here, and I remember back in Chicago, I, sat down with my partner, and there's no way I could have not come here and not regretted it.
Yes.
And we had a conversation about it, and his response was, okay, well, let's go to Nashville.
Right.
And I think about that a lot, because when you think about the gravity of that,
mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's a whole nother thing in a relationship with anybody who's in a relationship with somebody who's wrapped up into the scene. Mm-hmm. The sacrifice that those people that are in those relationships
I've been
making,
there. I've been there in that scenario where, that was not the response. Right? I would say, I would call that really, I would describe that as, a lot of trust in place, a lot of love in place, to the point where you can see it from where he could see it from your point of view, right? And not from the more selfish place of, I'm not calling anybody selfish. I'm not calling myself selfish. I'm just saying that when you don't have some of those core pieces, to a relationship in place that we've talked about in a previous episode recently, talking about trust, communication, the whole, what you expect. When that stuff's not there, then, the response is quite different. It's kind of like, it becomes like a kind of a tug of war, of a power struggle almost, of like, well, I don't want to move for you because then you rule the relationship or something like that. Like somehow the other person becomes less important, or their hopes and dreams are less important. And it's just, and that stuff is not for everybody, and not everybody is meant to follow another person to a city.
It's very complicated,
Right.
because it's huge implications,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
I think the good thing is that you find out by doing it. You find out pretty quick if the relationship has legs, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying anybody's wrong for doing this or that and the other thing. I'm just saying there's a lot of proof with his reaction and ultimate reaction. I'm sure it was like a tougher conversation to have, but and then hindsight being 2020, look at the time that's gone by and where are you now?
Yeah. Well, no, it's also a conflict for me because it's two
Yes.
things that you love, and you sometimes you have to make a choice, and it's like if I can't imagine, I feel like I knew myself even then that if I never moved, I was always forever would wonder what if, and I think I even
You don't
said
want to be
that. I said
resentful.
if I don't go explore this is going to cause. Then it becomes a problem not only for you, but it can cause
Yes.
a problem for the relationship later.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're living in this state of regret, then it comes up later. So
Yes.
it's we're certainly not going to solve every relationship problem, but it's complicated. And this whole creative life, when you love it and you also love the people that you're with and the relationships that you have, it can be a conflict.
I always have
sometimes,
problems
but-
with it, man. Yeah, it's like I am envious of folks like you and John Stanislawski. Like you say, I'm well aware that there are no perfect relationships, but I see long-term relationships with that my creative friends have, and I have never been able to quite lock that in. It's like I think part of it's finding the right person, but part of it is me, part of it's them, And I'm as I get older, guess what? I'm not less set in my ways. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, hell, it's time to be creative. I don't want to give that away anymore.
But as a writer of Love Was, I would think in your shoes, if
Yeah.
I put myself in your shoes,
Right.
it's almost like it still probably changes. Like I'll bet the next couple relationships or the next relationship that you
Yeah.
get in and you're looking back, you still go through, you draw on that, a lot of what that song is saying. And
Yeah. I think you knew me well when you knew a different side of me when I was writing that song. That was like not super late after I moved here. So another this other side of me that maybe like some people don't know about, like a kind of where yes, you are right is what I'm saying is like that's what you want. You want to have that stuff but it doesn't always work out the way you thought it would,
but oftentimes the way it is supposed to, we just don't know that until we get there.
Boom.
So,
Boom. Couldn't be more right. Yeah, another question for you. Do you think, again, when I wrote that song, I had rose-colored glasses on, if you remember correctly. I look at that song a little differently now. I look at life as it relates to romance a little bit differently now. My question for you is, do you think society is less committed these days? Reason I ask that, I feel like everything seems to be more temporary in relationships now, especially in the millennial, Gen Y, Gen Z kind of area. Does a song like Love Was have a place in this world?
oh, absolutely. I think probably to both because, unfortunately, I think just our culture has changed to more of a, we have a lot shorter attention spans collectively as a society as we did. I'm still an old-fashioned guy. I write people handwritten letters still.
Right.
It's a necessary evil for me to have social media presence. Like I realize that it's necessary, but I'd really prefer, a handwritten note.
Yeah.
And even like I mentioned earlier, like my parents are still high school sweethearts. I'm sure that I don't know. I'm sure there's some statistics out there someplace, but I would guess that there are a lot more people from there with their high school sweethearts in that generation than current generation. I don't know. I'm just guessing, and I think it's just a symptom of having shorter attention spans.
I wonder if fear is also at play. Like I think on the surface it looks like fear of commitment, but there's like some deeper rooted thing going on. Because like when you see how many relationships, I don't think people join relationships just to make them fall apart, but they still fall apart like crazy, right? And
well, that's why I think the song is still very much relevant, because even though relationships might be shorter in the aggregate, and there might be fewer people in this current generation in longer term relations, time will tell in some sense.
Right.
But that song, everybody loves. I mean, part of why songs are so universal is I don't think it changes the feelings that you got, with your first crush on a grade school playground, whether or not that relationship turned into anything long term or not. That feeling is universal. I don't think that stuff goes away. People you can still get your heart broken just as badly, if not worse, than that's been a universal human condition. That I think, as you were talking about space and time stuff earlier.
Right.
Even though some things of culture have changed, broken heart's pretty universal.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's one of many reasons why a song like that is, I don't think it's any less relevant to the times than it would have been, because a broken heart, unfortunately, is pretty universal, and it's things that people experience regardless of how long a relationship lasts or doesn't last, like that pain. And also on a brighter note, I think everybody, same deal, whether a relationship was a couple months or a couple years or many more. I think when you look back at them, the other thing that's universal about it is you learn something from all of those relationships, and
100%.
That's where the song comes in again too, is kind of looking back, and what you thought love was a little bit different, and that concept is timeless. In the sense of
always learning
relationships,
always learning. If you're not learning as you're getting older in life, got to be doing something wrong, right? It's hard to.
You're learning either way, whether
you want to admit it or not.
Yeah, that's right. Because the universal will give you the lesson you need, even if you think
somehow you figure out how to not walk into traffic.
Might not feel like it at the time, but when you look back, it's you're learning. We're all learning all the time.
Absolutely. Dude, this is like such a really good conversation.
Well, this is why we go out, and it's
we do this
not
anyway.
just,
That's why I knew it would be great.
It becomes a 3 or 4 hour event.
I know.
The only difference is we're at a bar figuring all this stuff out.
I know. I knew this was going to be a great episode. It was such a great fluid one. What are the three? So I'm gonna try to. I always try to do this. Trying to bullet point some items at the end here. Okay. I'm looking for 3, possibly the 3 biggest lessons you've learned on what it takes to create a life with a partner. You talked about, those challenges, and coming out of those challenges, you kind of lifted up into this level of intelligence that we can't replicate anywhere else. What do you think maybe are 3 of the bigger lessons that you've learned?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question.
I know it is. And it doesn't have to be the top 3 biggest, but like maybe the 3 things that jump out in your mind on what it takes to create a successful life with a partner.
Yeah. You were talking about having your antennas up earlier in the creative sense. And I think maybe that's the place I would start, because I think it's important to always have those antennas up. Well, not always. This is the challenge, making a conscious effort to have those antennas up with your partner. Because I mean, even as a creative person, if you've got the song idea in your head and you're kind of, you're not in the writing room at that point. You've got either an idea that you're thinking about where it could go, or maybe you have started a song, whether on your own or a co-write or whatever, and you didn't finish, but you got some good stuff down, and you might be, walking around your kitchen or on the way to the grocery store, or whatever. You're really in that mode, in the creative mode. Or whatever.
Right.
I think it's really important to have and you got to work at this. I got to work at this, making sure you're also doing that for your partner. Like if your partner comes through the door and they're having a bad day and you're kind of wrapped up in your head on a song, you don't always have to be on. I don't think that's possible. It's kind of just like when you are in the writing room, when you tune out all your other distractions, you're there. So you don't want to have your antennas up for the text messages and the emails and the distractions. But within the context of a relationship, making sure that you're taking the time, just like we do for our creative space and vice versa, that you're keeping those antennas up for the things that are spoken and unspoken. Every relationship is different. People behave differently. Like there's sometimes your partner might be feeling something that is not so obvious, and you might have to ask questions or.
Like relationship awareness.
Relationship awareness, that's right. And being, there's a word for it. I can't think of the word, but being like that same type of receptivity. We were talking about energy before. Like imagine, I always use this example.
To that, yeah.
Well, when I'm talking about energy, because everybody's experienced this, and this is even a cliche example, but it's like when you walk into a room and two people have been fighting, but you don't hear a word. You don't hear any shouting. Let's say you arrive at somebody's house as a guest and you walk through the door and you just feel this awkwardness.
Cut it with a knife.
That's right. And then you might find out later, or you might not find out later, that they had a argument, the way before. You can feel that. You can feel, and nobody said a word. You can feel that. So I think trying to have antennas up, for lack of a better word, of what your partner might be going through that's not spoken, and trying to tune into that. Other than the obvious, make time to have the conversations. But I mean, I tie that into the creative thing, because sometimes it is in conflict. Like if you've got your antenna up and you're in the zone in your kitchen, cutting onions, thinking about your song idea, you might not that other antenna that's tuned into what your partner's day might be doing, it might not be, the signal might not be as strong, or it might be off as entirely. And if your partner comes walking through the door, and everybody's different with this too, how they handle creative boundaries and everything else. But at some point, like if you have to make time for that too. And it's I know that's something that I'm trying to do, and I'm also learning from as well, because it's having antennas up to try to be a little bit more receptive about just sometimes it's as simple as putting yourself into somebody else's shoes. And even what I was saying before, we're kind of the weird creative people, right? What must it be like to be in a relationship with us? Like, let's say, it's hard to imagine not being a creative person, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if let's say we were the person we're in the relationship with, and trying to imagine what it would be like to be in a relationship with us as creative people.
Right.
The
Probably
challenges
feeling
that
second
must be.
fiddle.
That's
and
right.
Yes, it's like a lot of I think it does take a lot of selflessness and a lot of like perspective. I think a lot of people, they get caught up in the feeling second fiddle. So it takes a very unique
making
individual.
time for both. I think that's part of the struggle of this creative life too, is this tug of needing to do this, whatever this is, a painter, a songwriter, whatever that creative thing that is really tugging at you, that is part of your soul, that's super important. Trying to find the balance between giving that the attention that
So that'd be
it
number
deserves,
2. Balance.
whether it's there you go. There's one to 2, and finding out how you can not make space for both.
That's a
because
great
the flip
point.
side is also true. Like we as creative people also need to make time for sacred space for
Yeah.
the
Being
creative
a human
process.
being. Yeah.
So, and now when you've got a relationship, you've got another person involved in that life. So trying to find boundaries of some sort, whether
Right.
it's, I'm going to have creative time from, this time to this time, or co-writes and stuff are easy. You put them on the calendar, you're at a co-write, that stuff's easy. The harder stuff
Yeah.
that I found is the stuff, whether it's my book I'm working on or music, or even when if I'm writing a song by myself, it's
Right.
when you don't have the boundaries of a co-write. We're going to co-write at so-and-so's studio from this time. Those boundaries are inherently in place. You leave the house, you drive to the co-write, everybody is in that space. It's a lot harder when we're out in the world living life, also trying to keep fueling the creative juices, even though we're not in a writing room writing a song, but also being present, for your partner, and not only being present, but being responsive to the things that they need, and
Yeah.
knowing how to operate those levers is
That's a great point. Yeah. To
still
not
trying
get,
to figure that out.
to not get too off the rails and down the rabbit hole because you have somebody else to think about. Yeah. Balance and boundaries. That's huge. Regardless of what your other obligations or interests or whatever might be. Yeah. And what about one more?
I think 3 is just we're probably back to love again, and recognizing, to kind of putting this full circle, that we're all students of life. And in the context of a relationship, and that regardless of how long the relationship is, it's a continued. We're all still learning up until we die, and there's some mistakes that are new that we're going to make. There's some mistakes that we're going to make again and again, and we have to forgive again and again, and vice versa. I probably need forgiven a lot more, in the sense. So being back to that again, like this, there is no storybook version of love, and recognizing that we're going to make mistakes, and we just have to power through it and keep making the tweaks and the adjustments as we go, all while knowing that that's also changing. Relationship change, the dynamics change in a relationship. We're still changing, so we're trying to. It's not as simple as here's our goal.
Yeah.
And as we get older and older in life, we're slowly getting to the goal of. That's also changing with how we change.
Everything's a moving target. So yeah, it's not like you're this static being that is set in stone and never going to change again. It'd be a lot easier that way, because then you'd define the plan and then you'd go after it. And if your partner was also static and never changing,
and it's the exact opposite. You've got two people, neither of which are static, that you're trying to find
everything
and keeping it going. That adapting is probably one of the key words.
Adaptation,
learning how to adapt.
Yes,
and
that is huge. Well, I'm really glad I
spend
asked
a
that
lifetime
question.
doing that as well, because it's not. And what works for my relationship might not work for yours, and vice versa. So it's like that also is different for every person in a relationship.
But what you're talking about, right? You're 100% right. And the beauty of this conversation and this show, and why I wanted to make it, so that folks like you can, share your perspective and your stories, is like what we're talking about here is just so universal. I think you've dropped a lot of really, I think, next level knowledge and reminders around this topic of love. That seem to just find its way out of the ether, down onto a page, down onto a little recording, led to a record, and here we are. It led to a really great conversation where we can really break this stuff open.
Well, to that point, can I ask you about? I'm always curious about you talked a little bit about this, but didn't get deep into it. How it all came about in that room. Like,
Oh, okay.
take me back to the writing room
Sure.
of this song, because I feel like there's always some magic that shows up on a song like this. And talk about the writing room that day and how this song came to life.
Yeah. I think so this is about me and Joey, we were in this habit of writing songs just by necessity at like starting around 5 or 6 p.m. So it started to get dark outside, especially if it was in the wintertime. And so I have certain memories about every single co-writing session. And for this one, I remember this was the second song that we wrote with the band. So we felt, and the first one was really cool too. Actually, the first one's also on the same album. Just so everybody knows, a little cheap plug here. Love Was is actually on the 4 album. It's called 4, Finding My Way Back Home. And another song that I wrote with these folks, the same co-writing team, was a song called Confession. So we had written Confession. We felt very high on that because we just felt like that was a really special song. So we had some momentum going into this one. We were like kind of almost like confident that was going to be great, we continued to feel that way. So I don't remember this, I'm not sure whose idea it was. What I do know is that the title was not mine. It's not something that I had written down. I don't recall writing down a title called Love Was, and we're going to talk about what love was and keep it evolved. I remember whoever brought that to the table, we very quickly discussed how, as life goes on, I just remembered. See, sometimes you gotta I haven't thought about this in
Activate those
6
neurons
years.
for me. Right?
It's like a 6-year-old song. Dude, now I remember. I just said that I didn't come up with a title. Maybe I didn't, because it just doesn't sound like a title out of my head. This is how the song happened. I was I was big on song idea generation at the time. And I was just turning every stone. I would go pull a book out and I'd be like, where's the song title? Where's the song? You know what I mean? I do know all that stuff, right? And I remember having this article. It was like a Facebook post. And I had printed it. I'd take a screenshot of it and I put it in my idea notebook, like my Google Doc. And it was a story about this guy praising his wife, talking about she was at 18 she was and the captain of the cheerleading squad. It was at 18, I met a captain of a cheerleading squad. At 24, I met the greatest mother of my children that you could ever have. At 35, I met maybe somebody who changed their career into the. He kept saying, I met a. His point. I say all this. Sorry, I'm kind of remembering this as I'm talking here. If you notice in the song, it's I met a. In 6 days a week. We're pulling from that. Again, it was this long Facebook post. This was all in response to somebody saying, a single person's mindset of, I don't want to settle down and be with one person for the rest of my life. I want the opportunity to meet and be with other people. And his was dude, at 18, I met this person. At 23, I met this person. At 35, I met this person. At 45, 55, 65, I met this person. It was an older person posting all of this, right? And his point was, if it's the right person, she can be that mystery. You can keep peeling that onion. That's kind of on you. It's A, are you picking the person that's for you, and B, are you paying attention to the fact that they are always, you know, evolving, and that it doesn't have to be a different human being for them to, you know, evolve into something you don't recall from their previous like era, or you know, previous role 10 years prior. But yeah, it was like this post of this guy making this really, really great point, and I just felt it to be very romantic and spot on. But that's where it came from.
I think it works both ways too, which I think adds to the beauty of that. Because, like I said, I had it on repeat, and I saw it both ways. I heard it both ways.
Yeah.
You know, and it all goes back to the journey. I think that it takes you on. That person in that song could just as easily, to me,
Yes.
could be different people as it could
Oh, yeah,
the same.
yeah.
And I think that just adds to the universality of it, because you grab onto
Yeah.
as a listener what's been the story for you. So.
That's always like, I've always felt you bring up a great point. When these things are written, especially when they're recorded, I feel like it's like, you see how long it took me to remember that. They're not for me anymore. They're for you, and they're for anybody that can connect with it. And it's like the meaning is their meaning.
And it
is your
works
meaning.
both ways.
Yeah.
It really does. When
Absolutely.
you listen to it, you know,
Yeah.
you might have a little different skewed thing because you got the whole idea of, I mean, you knew what happened in the writer's room and all that
Yeah.
dialogue and how that all came about. But as a listener, not knowing any of that,
Yeah.
it works for me. It works both ways. You know?
Absolutely.
And it's beautiful that it does, because
Yeah.
it can be that same person, or it could be the different people. The message isn't lost or diluted.
Absolutely.
Really at all.
And you know what's cool is it's like I agree with you 100%. I think the reason why I feel the way I do about, you know, I think the listener owns the meaning to the song once it's recorded, once it's out in the world, because like it doesn't take away from the fact that a beautiful sentiment or a beautiful moment in real life that I felt like I had by coming across this passage that this person had written, that led to something that is like this chain reaction. Again, it's like no matter what, like there could be others that take a totally different, you know, derive a totally different meaning. That's still a positive experience for them. You know, it's like beautiful moments create these chain reactions of more beautiful moments, and it's just like this like spider web, you know, just like, again, what else besides music can do that?
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's wild. I'm glad that you asked me about that, because I haven't thought about that in forever. That was almost lost to time. A couple more
I
years
love
I
those
would've
stories, and
forgot.
maybe that's just the songwriter in me, but I like to know
Yeah.
like where it comes about, kind
Yeah.
of a peek behind the curtain on.
Yeah.
Because you know when you got something good. We show up every day trying to write something great, of course.
Yeah.
But like when you do, you know, and it's like there's usually some sort of magic that happens in the room, or how the song came about, that I'm always interested in as a songwriter. So appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely. And best wishes always to that band, the members of that band, Apollo's Crown, and Joey Ebach, obviously. I know Brian Mello just released, you should check him out. He just released a single, I think the other day, and it's outstanding. He was I believe he was a Canadian Idol. He's just one of my favorite singers like ever. He reminds me of just, he's got a part of him. He's his own thing, but he reminds me of Bryan Adams vocally. He has that very unique, like, you know, rasp that's so strong. It's not tired. It's like this, just an incredible voice. Nothing but the best to Brian, Victoria, and Andrew. What else? Oh, I had one more question for you, sir. If you could go back and give a younger you the heads up on anything about love, and it might have been something we talked about already, what would that be? The younger you. If you were going to go back and be like, hey, man, let me just save you some trouble here.
It's cliche, but just be yourself. And I think, again, going back to kind of my being a kid and the struggle of being gay and whatnot. And we were in a different time then. I mean, we're in 2024. The world has come a long way with some of this stuff. It was a little bit different, back in the 90s, let's say. I think I graduated from the 8th grade in 1993. It would have taken a lot of courage and it would have been super bold. But like when you get all the way down this road and see how things worked out, the quicker I could have become comfortable with who I was, and this is universal probably to everybody, the quicker you can become comfortable with who you are as a person, the better. And I think that's a common struggle, especially early relationships. You sometimes get caught up in the excitement. You find yourself doing things that maybe aren't you because you either want something to work, or we do that with friendships as well. Just kind of looking back as on the trajectory of being a grade school kid, adolescent, and an adult, and even as recent as like we were talking, we're different writers than we were 7 or 10 years ago, and even from that perspective, I'd say the same thing. It's like, just be yourself. The quicker you can be comfortable with and be yourself, the better off you're going to be. And that's not to say squeeze all the lemon juice out of the mentors and the people that can teach you something. Always do that. But as you're doing that, don't lose sight of who you are and what you want to do. And even watching your trajectory of like we were talking about earlier, coming to town and now molding your own artist career and everything, it's like the quicker you can tap into you, the universal you for everybody listening. That's
such a great point.
That's
it's everything.
Really
man.
Hard to do.
It's hard,
but it's
everything.
It is everything. So it's getting to that place as soon as you can, and because then you can start working on, like you said, you're still not stagnant. It's not like the you is a fixed thing that you're trying to figure out.
But at least you're working on the right things now.
That's right. The quicker you can get to to you,
I laugh because like how much I would feel like before you wake up to that, you spin some wheels doing some things that aren't super wildly fulfilling. Yeah.
And it's everywhere. I think it was a Leanne Rimes interview in American Songwriter. It was probably a year or two ago now, maybe 2 years ago. There was a little one-pager in there about her. And she said, things finally started happening to me when I started embracing myself and stopped listening to what everybody else told me I should be doing. And I started doing and the same thing happens with songs. Like the best songs come from that room of people being at a real place, not trying to yes, we're crafting songs, but the more the more real a place it comes from, that's really where the magic is, and really getting to the bottom of that versus trying to make shit up.
And love too.
Right.
Man, just like think about what you're saying about craft and song and just being yourself as a creator, man. It's like that's such a great metaphor for being yourself in love as well. It's like, because when you're not, I talked about this on a previous episode, like this whole thing of like this, you put your best foot forward in love, like when you meet somebody, like there's that like initial like honeymoon stage. I'm not talking about the one that you should maintain your whole life, but the one that's very temporary where you're just like, I'm perfect and you're perfect. And it's like, what if you just laid it all out there? What if you were just like, hey, these are the things that I struggle with. You know what I mean? Can you handle that? And vice versa. It's I'm not suggesting like that's the way somebody should approach a relationship, but there's so much not being yourself, I think, happening in these failed relationships. I know that I've been a part of that.
Yeah. Even in a co-write relationship, really, like it's and I that's been one of the good parts about where I feel like I'm at a place lately where I'm finally comfortable, like writing songs that I like, and with co-writers that I like, instead of getting into this. We all would love major cuts, of course. Running around, Music Row, and it's like it's a kid listening to a music to have somebody like Garth Brooks or Kenny Chesney cut your song. Of course, it's a dream.
Right.
But I think what really makes a great song is really finding what we love. And if Blake Shelton or Kenny Chesney or whoever happens to cut it, even better. But step one is write stuff that we love.
Oh yeah.
And again, I guess I said this at the beginning. It's like you found that there's no hierarchy, but it's like I feel like you're a little further on the road of like you watching how you've gotten to a place of where you are is an inspiration to me, because even just that, learning to be the two things we just covered, learning how to be more comfortable with yourself and learning how to write and really do the stuff you love creatively, that is hard to do, especially when you're in the mode of when learning mode. Despite everything that there is to learn about that, it's sometimes really hard just to focus on what you love, what we love, and then really leaning into that and not being worried as much with what somebody else thinks of what our art is.
I appreciate that, man. I think it's the, you know what I think it is? Because when you say like it's not easy, I agree with you. I think you almost need that, some kind of rock bottom moment. You need that thing to get you so mad that you inevitably just start being you and doing you, almost out of spite because of whatever it is that you're mad about. You know what I mean?
Maybe that's why they call it a 10-year town, because it
Yes,
takes you a while.
it takes you 9 years
there.
to get jaded.
And then
You know what I mean?
and then that becomes the point where you finally start being yourself and working
100%.
And then what do you know?
But that's what I was saying earlier, man. That's why I don't know if this came across the way I wanted it to, but it doesn't take away the fact we still need our 101. We still need our Steve Susskind seminars, right? Those experiences, everybody has their own. You still need the reps. You still need the bad co-writes. You still need to make all the same mistakes that you made that made you, so that you can be you later on. So it's like, it's easy to, if you don't think about it very much, it's easy to look back on, let's use your example, those first 9 years that we look at as like the failed 9 years. No, you don't get year 10 without those failed 9, because it's a part of that long and winding road. You know what I mean?
That's relationships too.
Yes.
Yes. God bless a broken road and
Yes.
unanswered prayers, and you are the person
Boom.
ready for the relationship you're in because of your grade school and high school heartbreaks.
I think we
And
cracked
college
it.
heartbreaks. They're
I think we cracked it.
I don't know that we cracked anything, but I feel like we're getting better, and that's all that matters. And
It's a
we're
very good
getting
reminder.
getting more comfortable with all of it, loving ourselves and learning how to
The whole crazy thing.
Because if you're loving yourself and you're loving what you're doing, what more do you need?
I don't think
It's like trying to really lean into that, and that's an ongoing struggle sometimes too, to remind ourselves of the gratitude that comes with that. There's nothing better than hearing a song you really love come to life, whether you wrote it or not. You write a song you really like, it's awesome to hear that back. If it's somebody else that wrote it that makes you feel that way, even
Nothing
better.
like it.
So it's like now we're in a spot where we can keep writing what we love and keep cheerleading for all of our,
Yes.
our buddies that are. And then we talked about that too, like they're on this creative path together. It becomes, that's the cool part too. Like there was a time where we were, way back then, where we were in a similar place of like, we didn't know how to write a song. We needed to go to some workshops to figure out how to even do that. And then watching everybody find their niche and their grow into themselves as whether it's a writer, an artist, somewhere in between, and anything, a painter, any type of creative life. And really, but you're going on the journey together and you're all finding your own thing. And that's, I think, where the magic is. We're all kind of growing into all of that love.
You're
for
right.
ourselves, for our content. And it hasn't made us any less close, I guess is what I was trying to say. Like it's, in this whole creative thing.
If anything, we're closer now.
That's right. Yeah, and it's, even though we started in the same place and we're getting into our own selves.
Yes.
That has been the most rewarding part of about now. Is that's at least the phase we're on until we get to the next phase and look back that there's more coming. But
I agree. There's actually, it reminds me of this thing that I have in the works. I haven't kind of spoken on yet, but I want to tell you about it today. But later on, the one thing that I wish, because I agree with 100 everything that you're saying. The only thing that I wish was that all of us had a level of freedom. It's hard in these times that we live in to do that to do what I'm kind of thinking about, but like, I wish there was more of a collective, more of a community, I wish we could do our own things together. Like I wish we didn't have some of the obligations. We talk about that stuff a lot too, of like, day job versus passion job. I wish that we were all kind of set up, and there was like a kind of a collective and a community around this more than what it is. I think you would agree that Music Row is not what it once was. And just for a creative town, I feel like we're all a little siloed out. I wish it was a little more like the 60s in New York or something.
I hear
that.
you. I'm a big, not only a nostalgia guy, but I really would have loved to be on the row in the 90s in that heyday. And I think it's maybe good to go to that place and imagine, but come back quickly, because those times are not, they're gone and not coming back. But we don't know what the future is.
We
either.
don't.
There could be some really great things that are coming.
I have some
too,
ideas.
I know.
I have some ideas, at least on a small scale, that I want to run by you and see what you think. Well, this has been a joy, my friend. Do you have anything you want to plug? I mean, you got the book, so when there is news to share about the book, we will share that here. The book, the musical. Anything else you want to plug?
I got those plates are spinning, and in fact, this will be a little bit of a fire to keep those going.
Awesome.
So I appreciate it, and this has been great. So thanks for having me.
No, this is a blast.
And, always good. It's almost like we're at the bar someplace.
I agree. Let's go to the bar. Are you ready to go to the bar?
Sounds good to me.
I'm like starving. We gotta get some food. We gotta get some sips. Well, this has been episode 9, everybody. Scott Volkerding, thank you for being here. Come back soon.
I'll do the plug for your Love Was. If you haven't heard it, definitely hear it. It's one of my favorites. And thanks again for having me.
Thanks, buddy.
You can find me